Hey you guys, Kari here from the Alfred Homestead, and today I wanted to share with you guys how we harvested our meat rabbits and what we did with them. So just a few days ago, we went ahead and harvested our first meat rabbits. We had 5 total that had survived from their litter, and we kept one of the does for breeding purposes later, and then we went ahead and harvested the other 4, which I think were split, two bucks and 2 does, I believe. So my husband has a setup in the back that we used for the first time harvesting these rabbits. It worked out pretty well. He had just a piece of plywood board that he secured to the lean-to, and it has a V. And in this V is where you put the rabbit's head, and with a pretty firm motion, he's gonna go ahead and yank on that rabbit. So viewer discretion advised, you guys. If you have little ones around, maybe get them onto some other video. Okay, so he went ahead, and there's a tarp there just because we have the other rabbits behind there and we just didn't want them to see the whole process. So that was a really quick process with the piece of plywood that my husband made himself. You can buy more expensive ones online for sure, but he just went ahead and made one himself. And you guys, I don't know, I'm kind of queasy watching this stuff myself, so my husband did all the harvesting. But I will say, this harvesting, it was so much easier than the chickens. Well, so we ended up with about 3-pound rabbits after everything was said and done, not including the organs that we also kept. We didn't keep all of the organs, just the most important ones that we'll eat, like the lungs and the livers. So all in all, I think we had about 3.5 pounds per rabbit when you're including those organs that we kept, because I will be cooking that with them. There's a lot of nutrition in those organs, so I don't want to miss out on that, especially because these were organically raised rabbits. They were on the pasture as well as eating organic feed, so these are very high quality animals, so we definitely want to be eating some of those healthy organ meats. So my husband went ahead and butchered the rabbits for me. This is how I froze them after they were butchered into about 4 or 5 pieces. It just makes it easier for cooking. You absolutely do not have to do this. You could just keep the rabbit whole. If you wanted to slow cook it like that would be totally fine. But for my purposes, I wanted to just go ahead and save as much space in the freezer, and we did that by partitioning these rabbits into pieces. Which again was a lot easier than having to butcher and cut up the chickens. The chickens, it's a lot harder to cut through them, and I don't know, the rabbits just seemed so much easier. It probably took my husband about 10 minutes to cut this rabbit up, so that was pretty easy. And like I said, these rabbits were each about 3 pounds, which is a full meal for our family of 5. So, you know, that's a pretty good size rabbit. Maybe 3 to 4 pounds is really ideal. And that's about how much we had with our chickens too. This piece of the rabbit is like the tenderloin, and that's kind of like the white meat of the rabbit. It was a nice chunk of meat in the stew. If you don't really like dark meat, this is the piece for you. So after all was said and done, this is what one rabbit looked like, and that's what I used for the rabbit stew that I made. This isn't any particular recipe, it's just what I did because it sounded good. So all I did was saute some onions and then some carrots and some garlic as well as the start. And once those were cooked through, I went ahead and removed those from the pan and added my floured rabbits. I went ahead and floured these with unbleached flour and some salt just to get those nice and browned in the pan, and the flour will just kind of help thicken up the stew later on in the cooking process. So you can see I just added the organ meats directly in there. I didn't even bother flouring them. They're just going to be cooked down in the stew anyways. So you can see I'm just working on browning the rabbit, and then I took some of that meat out. That way I could deglaze the bottom of that pan. So what I ended up using was about a cup of chicken broth, homemade organic chicken broth that I had to use up in the fridge. If I had had more, I would have used more, but that's all I had at the time, so that's what I used. I would have preferred 2 cups, so that would have been better. And then I just sort of deglazed all the bits and pieces off the bottom of the pan. That's a lot of flavor right there, so that's what I deglazed it with. You could also use some white wine or even red wine if you were inclined. I didn't have any on hand, so that's what I used. And then I also took some bay leaves and some other spices, salt and pepper, your basics. I kept it pretty simple. I also got some thyme from the garden that I threw in there as well, so that was a nice addition. I just have some white wine vinegar here, just a dash, just to help the flavor since I didn't have the wine in there. If you're using wine, skip the vinegar. And I'm putting the meat and the vegetables back in, and now I'm adding to this mushrooms and mushroom stock. These were dried mushrooms, like porcini mushrooms. It was a variety mix, and I like having that mushroom broth flavor since I didn't have that much chicken broth. So I just added everything back to the pot and let it simmer for 2 hours on low. This is how it turned out. I'm pretty happy with it. I just served it with some steamed potatoes, and it was super tender, you guys. The rabbit tasted just like chicken. It didn't taste gamey at all. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing how we harvested our rabbits and how we utilized them in the kitchen. We'll see you guys next time.